When I took on pet-sitting jobs, I thought the biggest challenges would be cleaning up messes or getting a picky dog to eat. I never thought I'd end up fearing for my life. But that's exactly what happened the weekend I watched Willow, a tabby cat, at Mr. Green's house. Mr. Green was different. He wasn't rude, but there was something off about him. He had this quiet, slow way of speaking, like he was always thinking of something else, something he wasn't sharing. His house reflected that same energy, dark curtains drawn over every window, shelves cluttered with random things, old clocks, jars with no labels, and a strange amount of padlocks. Before leaving for his trip, Mr. Green gave me a long list of rules. Feed Willow at 7 in the morning and 7 at night. Scoop the litter box immediately after she used it. Don't open the windows. And one rule stood out: never go near the locked door in the hallway, he said. It's for your safety. I laughed nervously, assuming he was joking, but his expression didn't change. He handed me the key to the house, patted Willow on the head, and left without another word. The first day went fine. Willow was a sweet cat, curious and playful. I spent the evening on the couch, scrolling through my phone while she batted at a toy mouse. The house, though, made me uneasy. It wasn't just the clutter or the shadows in every corner. It was the quiet, too quiet. No hum of an AC unit, no creaks from the walls, nothing. It felt like the house was holding its breath. That night, as I was locking up, I heard it for the first time, a faint shuffling sound coming from behind the locked door. At first, I thought it was Willow. But when I looked, she was sitting next to me, her ears perked up, staring at the hallway. I shook it off as the house settling, but something about it made my stomach knot. The next morning, I fed Willow and cleaned up her litter box. As I was about to head back to the couch, I noticed muddy footprints near the back door. They were small, not like a grown man's, but not a cat's either. I checked the door, it was locked. Every window was locked too. Maybe the footprints were old, I told myself. But then why hadn't I seen them yesterday? By late afternoon, Willow started acting strange. She would sit in the hallway, staring at the locked door, meowing softly. Every so often, she'd bolt back to me, her tail puffed up. I tried to distract her with toys, but she wouldn't settle down. That evening, as I was heating up leftovers in the microwave, I heard the sound again, shuffling, but louder this time. It wasn't coming from behind the door, though. It was coming from inside the walls. I froze, staring at the hallway. Was it mice? Rats? Grabbing a flashlight from the counter, I stepped closer to the door. Willow followed me, crouched low like she was hunting something. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Just as I was about to step back, I felt it, a cold draft coming from the bottom of the door. That didn't make sense. There weren't any vents nearby. Then came the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart jumped, thinking Mr. Green had come home early. But when I peeked out the window, the driveway was empty. No car. No lights. Just the sound of an engine idling, and then it was gone. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but my eyes kept darting to the hallway. When I finally worked up the courage to check the door again, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The padlock was hanging loose. The door was slightly open. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was small, barely more than a closet. There were several plastic bins stacked against the walls, and the smell was sharp, like a mix of metal and bleach. I opened one of the bins. Inside were bundles of stained rags. Another bin held rolls of duct tape, zip ties, and rusted tools. My hands were shaking. What was this? Why did Mr. Green need this stuff? Before I could process it, I heard the front door unlock. My heart stopped. Mr. Green wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. I quickly shut the door, but I knew he'd noticed the lock was undone. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Sam. His voice was calm, but it sent a chill down my spine. I forgot something. Are you still here? I scrambled into the kitchen, locking the door behind me. Willow darted under the table. I dialed 911, whispering to the operator. There's someone in the house. Please hurry. The footsteps stopped outside the kitchen door. You opened it, didn't you? Mr. Green's voice was low, almost amused. I told you not to. I heard him try the handle, then a soft laugh. You're making this difficult. The sound of sirens filled the air. He must have heard them too because the footsteps retreated. When the police arrived, they found the bins and enough evidence to link Mr. Green to several crimes. I don't pet sit anymore. And every time I hear a shuffle in the dark, I remember that night. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't in movies or books. They live next door. When I took the pet sitting job, I thought it was going to be easy. Watch a golden retriever named Max hang out in a fancy house for the weekend, and get paid for it. No big deal, right? I had no idea how wrong I was. The house was massive, the kind of place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a backyard that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But it was also way too quiet. The family had warned me to keep all the doors and windows locked because the house was in a secluded area near the woods. Honestly, I thought they were just being overly cautious. I locked up when I got there, fed Max, and settled in to binge some TV. At first, it was fine. Max was this big, friendly golden retriever, super chill. But around 8 p.m., he started acting weird. He stood at the window in the living room, growling softly. I got up to check, but all I could see was darkness. I figured it was probably a raccoon or something, so I closed the curtains and tried to calm him down. But Max wouldn't stop. He kept pacing between the window and the back door, his ears perked up like he was listening for something. That's when I noticed the back door. It was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it earlier. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I'd forgotten. I locked it again and tried to focus on the movie I was watching. But my gut was telling me something wasn't right. A little while later, the security system beeped. You know, the kind of beep that happens when a door or window opens. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and walked slowly around the house. Every door and window I checked was locked. The system must have glitched, I told myself. I reset it and tried to shake off the nerves. Max, though, was still acting up. He followed me everywhere, his eyes darting toward the windows. I started to feel paranoid. I kept telling myself there was no one outside, but every time I glanced at the big windows, I felt like I was being watched. You ever get that feeling, like someone's eyes are on you? That's exactly how I felt, and it was freaking me out. Then I went into the kitchen. That's when I saw it. One of the knives from the block on the counter, it wasn't where it was supposed to be. It was lying flat on the counter, and the blade was wet. Not dripping, just damp. My hand started shaking. Did I leave it there? No, I hadn't even used a knife. I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed it and put it back. My brain was scrambling for a logical explanation, but nothing was making sense. The lights cut out. Just like that, the whole house went pitch black. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it in my ears. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, and Max was right by my side, growling low and steady. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was probably a power outage, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. That's when I heard the footsteps. They weren't faint or far away. They were heavy and deliberate, coming from upstairs. I froze. Max froze too, his growl getting louder. My mind was racing. Someone was in the house. I had to do something, but what? My first instinct was to call the police, but I didn't want to make a sound. I grabbed Max's collar and led him to a closet near the living room. We squeezed inside, and I shut the door as quietly as I could. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone while dialing 911. I whispered to the operator, explaining what was happening, and they told me officers were on their way. The footsteps moved slowly, room by room, like whoever was upstairs was searching for something, or someone. Then they stopped. I held my breath. The only sound was Max's soft growling. My heart felt like it was about to explode. And then, I heard it, the creak of the stairs. They were coming down. The footsteps were slow and steady, moving closer to the living room. I clutched Max, praying he'd stay quiet, but he let out a low growl. My phone buzzed loudly with a text notification. The footsteps stopped. Whoever was out there had heard it. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid. Then the footsteps started again, moving faster now. But instead of heading toward the closet, they went past it. I heard the sound of a window sliding open. Then silence. Minutes felt like hours. I stayed in the closet with Max until I heard the sirens. The police searched the house and found signs of a break-in. A window upstairs had been forced open, and there were muddy footprints all over. The worst part? They found a sleeping bag and empty food wrappers in the attic. Someone had been staying there, probably watching me the whole time. I don't pet sit anymore. Max was a good dog, but that job was the scariest night of my life. And every time I close a window or lock a door, I triple-check it. You never really know who's out there, or who might already be inside. You won't believe the night I had babysitting my neighbor's dogs. It started like any other job: watch the house, feed the dogs, make sure nothing goes wrong. Easy, right? That's what I thought. But the second I stepped into Mr. Harris's house, something felt off. The house was too quiet. Not the cozy kind of quiet, but the creepy kind that makes your skin crawl. Tank, the Rottweiler, and Shadow, the Doberman, stood at the door waiting for me. They were massive, their eyes locked on me like they were sizing me up. I'll admit, they made me nervous, but Mr. Harris said they were well trained, so I brushed it off. Mr. Harris was in a rush to leave. He handed me a list of instructions: feed them at 8, let them out at 9, and, this was weird, stay out of the basement and the room at the end of the hall. Those are off limits, he said. I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was just being dramatic, but the way he looked at me was dead serious. As soon as he left, the dogs started acting weird. Tank and Shadow kept pacing, growling low at the hallway. I checked the time, still an hour until feeding. Come on, guys, let's chill, I said, trying to calm them down, but their eyes kept darting toward that end of the house. The house smelled strange, like metal and cleaning chemicals. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was probably just from the dogs. But then I noticed something else: scratch marks on the door of the off-limits room. Long, deep scratches. Not the kind dogs make when they're bored, but the kind they make when they're terrified. I decided to distract myself by exploring the kitchen. That's when I found the notebook. It was just lying on the counter, pages open like someone had been reading it. I figured it was Mr. Harris's and peeked inside, expecting to see grocery lists or recipes. Instead, I found sketches, disturbing ones. Diagrams of dog anatomy, with notes scrawled in shaky handwriting. Behavior correction, one page read. Obedience through control, said another. My stomach turned. What was this guy into? The dogs barked sharply, snapping me out of my thoughts. They were staring at the basement door now, hackles raised, teeth bared. I froze. That's when I heard it, the faintest sound, like scratching. It was coming from downstairs. I walked over, heart pounding, and pressed my ear to the door. The scratching grew louder, and I swear I heard a faint whine, like a hurt animal. My first thought was that maybe another pet was trapped down there, but I wasn't about to break Mr. Harris's rules. Instead, I latched the basement door, telling myself it was none of my business. The dogs didn't settle. If anything, they seemed more on edge. Shadow whined softly, nudging me toward the hallway. Against my better judgment, I followed, stopping in front of the locked room at the end. That's when I noticed it, the faint thudding sound coming from inside. Like someone, or something, was moving around. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Maybe it was the pipes, or the wind. But then Tank growled low and deep, his massive body pressing against the door as if to block it. My hands shook as I backed away. That's when everything went downhill. I went back to the living room to distract myself, but my brain kept spinning. What was in the basement? What was in that room? I couldn't stop thinking about the notebook, those diagrams, those scratch marks. And then, as if the universe wanted to make things worse, I heard the front door. My stomach dropped. Mr. Harris wasn't supposed to be back until morning. The dogs went wild, barking furiously as the door creaked open. Why are they so upset? I thought. But when Mr. Harris stepped inside, I understood. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes, something cold and calculating. Everything all right? He asked, his voice casual, almost too casual. I nodded, my throat dry. Yeah, just fed the dogs. They're a little jumpy. His eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. You didn't go into any of the rooms, did you? No, I lied, my voice shaky. I wasn't about to admit I'd been snooping. The dogs weren't having it. They stood between me and Mr. Harris, their bodies tense, growls rumbling deep in their chests. He noticed. Funny, he said, a crooked smile creeping across his face. They don't usually act like this. I felt trapped. My mind raced for a way out, and then it hit me, my phone. I pulled it out casually, pretending to text my mom. Instead, I sent a quick message to 911 with my location and the words, "Help. Unsafe." I should probably head out, I said, forcing a smile. It's getting late. He stepped aside, but his eyes followed me all the way to the door. Tank and Shadow stayed close, their presence giving me the courage to keep walking. When I got home, I didn't sleep. The police showed up at Mr. Harris's house the next day, and the rumors started flying. They found illegal training equipment, cages, and signs of abuse. No one knows what he was really up to, but I can't shake the feeling I barely got out of there in time. The scariest part? A week later, I found a small package on my porch. Inside was a notebook. Not just any notebook, his * notebook. There was no note, no explanation. just that same metallic smell.